Alright, Marvel fans, we're talking Infinity War today, and I will probably do a live stream at some point this week, given the fact that this movie has been out in theaters over a week now, and I've already done my initial thoughts video, but this one is going to have spoilers in it. And overall, I do believe the movie is coming out on Blu-ray and digital release and DVD sometime in August, and I believe Black Panther does come out for home release this week as well, so be sure to pick up a copy. Personally, I'm going to wait until Black Friday. I want to be smart this year because there are a ton of movies that I haven't bought yet, but I know that by the time Black Friday runs around, hopefully they'll be about half off or maybe $10 or so. So I mean, that's just me, what I want to do. But overall, I did see the movie last Monday. Yeah, it was last Monday when I went to see it, and I talked about it in my first video that I did feel like, you know, it was really long. I did know the length of the movie before I went, 2 hours and 30 minutes. A lot of stuff went down. It felt like 4 movies put into one, but I give the Russo brothers credit because for what it was a great film, very ambitious due to the fact that they had so many characters that they chose and had to work with in the film. But I know that reports are saying that they really made part 1 kind of its own movie, while part 2 is going to be kind of its own movie, but also continuing from part 1, because when Infinity War was first announced, it was pitched as part 1 in 2018 and then part 2 in 2019, and then it's like, okay, wow, it's going to be a 2-part movie. But now part 2 is not going to be called Infinity War. They've already said it's not called Infinity Gauntlet. I know I saw some memes floating around that it's going to be called Avengers Contracts in regards to the characters who are probably not going to be brought back to life are characters who got to the end of their contract. So that was pretty funny. But I honestly am looking forward to part 2. I still want to call it part 2 because literally it still is part 2 because it's part of the Infinity Gauntlet saga, if you will, with Thanos. But I did really enjoy the film itself, but it's not my favorite Marvel film, believe it or not. I mean, it was visually appealing. There were some scenes where the CGI was a bit wonky, like at the very end of the movie when the surviving Avengers kind of regrouped in Wakanda, wondering what the hell Thanos did. And I do remember that's when the Hulk Buster armor was pretty busted up, and you know, Bruce Banner was still inside of it, and they were standing next to like a waterfall or something. I'm just like, it's clearly obvious that the Hulk Buster he's in is CGI, so either get him out of the suit or just clean up the CGI. It was ridiculous, but it was really good. Like, I mean, the only gripes I had were minor nitpicks here and there when I went to the theater. If you know me, I've already said it plenty of times, I'm not really a theater goer. I'm more of a I'll just watch it at home kind of guy, Redbox, or I'll just buy the home release. But this was the kind of film where I felt like I definitely need to go to a theater to fully enjoy it, as well as be around other Marvel fans. That way we can react to certain scenes together. And it was definitely a treat. I went by myself Monday night because I wasn't going to go, but my roommate was like, dude, come on, get out the apartment for a little while. It's a Monday night, there's not going to be a lot of people, which he was correct. The theater itself had a good amount of people, but it wasn't like fully packed. Most of the people there were college students who were taking a break from studying for finals, so it was pretty cool to just interact with them, laugh at some scenes, talk about stuff. But yeah, overall it was a good time. I feel like one of the things that really not hurt the movie, but the fact that there were so many characters, some characters were just kind of there. Like, they might have had 1 or 2 lines of dialogue and then had their combat scenes that made it look badass, but other than that, they were kind of just there. Like, I did love the Iron Spider suit. I'm just kind of slightly upset we didn't get as much from it as I wanted, because, you know, if you read the comics or you watch the TV shows, you're familiar about the Iron Spider suit, like the Waldos, which are the leg-like appendages coming out the back of the suit and everything. Those are pretty cool. Iron Man's new armor, the fact that he was able to stand up to Thanos for a little bit of time before he got impaled, and then everybody and their mother hated Star-Lord for ruining the plan because he lashed out at Thanos due to Gamora being killed for the soul gem, and then he pretty much ruined Mantis's hypnotic hold on him right when Spider-Man was mere seconds, not even exaggeration, mere seconds from getting the glove off. I do believe that Spider-Man had actually gotten the glove off of Thanos's fingers, and he was about to slip it off his hand, but then nope, Star-Lord just ruined the entire plan, and that's when they lost hold of him. But the Wakanda battle was actually pretty exciting to watch. I mean, anytime Wakanda's in there, hey, I'm happy for it. I did feel that some characters were depowered. I mean, this comes from a guy that reads the comics and everything, because in the comics, Thanos can like throw down with the Avengers, gauntlet or no gauntlet. He could like hands down decimate them. But another thing was the fact that the Black Order, who actually are formidable in the comics, they really were mowed over in the film. Not that I didn't mind it to a certain extent, because to be honest, the characters really didn't like overpower them. They just thought smarter. Like Ebony Maw, aka Squidward, you know, it was strategized to get him sucked into space by Peter, I believe. It's like, hey, have you seen that old film called Aliens? So that was pretty cool how they defeated him by outsmarting him. That was pretty good. And then I forgot the other names of the other ones, but I know one got destroyed by she was hit by her own wheel of destruction. I don't really remember what the name was. It was kind of like a giant buzzsaw, but a drill. I don't even know how to explain it. A big wheel that like tore up the ground, sort of like a plow, and then she got destroyed by that. And then the one bulky guy, he got thrown into the, I think Banner used one of the Hulkbuster arms that was cut off, and then used it to pick the guy up and throw him into the barrier of Wakanda, and he got disintegrated like that. So that's how that went. I believe there were only 3. I think there were 3 in the Black Order. I could be wrong, but I think it was 3. And the character interactions were just great, like the banter, the dialogue. Thor, Rocket, and Groot were my favorite trio within the film, or let's just say my favorite group of characters as a whole. To be honest, especially with Star-Lord, in a lot of ways, I felt like the Guardians of the Galaxy felt more like we're making an appearance rather than a full-on crossover, if you catch my drift. I mean, if you watch Family Guy and The Simpsons, I remember there was the crossover episode where the Simpsons characters came on the Family Guy show. And to me, it felt like the Simpsons were kind of like making a guest appearance as opposed to indeed being stars of the show. I don't really know how to explain that, but that's kind of how I felt with some of the Guardians, because Gamora obviously played a role in the film, especially with Thanos. Actually, that does make sense, because she didn't really meet the Avengers. She kind of like was just taken by Thanos and then, you know, killed. Drax and Mantis and Star-Lord, of course, they met. Tony, Peter, Thor, and then Doctor Strange. And Nebula eventually came in there. So maybe it's the fact that all the characters weren't grouped together. That's probably why it felt so weird. It's kind of like, okay, only some characters will meet other characters. There's not going to be a huge battle. Maybe in part 2, whenever they defeat the main villain. I don't know if Thanos is going to be the big bad of part 2. It might be something else, because I'm pretty sure that the Time Stone is going to be utilized in some way, shape, or form. Maybe to bring people back, or erase the events of what happened during part 1. We'll just have to wait and see. But the way I look at it, another analogy to other franchises, if you grew up watching Power Rangers, you know, whenever like, okay, the current season of Rangers is going to meet and team up with the previous season. Like, you know, Lightspeed Rescue came on Power Rangers Time Force, then Time Force came on Wild Force, and you know, Lost Galaxy came on Lightspeed Rescue, and then In Space came when Lost Galaxy. And in most, not all, but in most crossovers, there's usually a 2-parter where you have part 1 where you have the old members showing up because a villain that's an extension of their main villain from their season comes into the current show. The Rangers meet up and get beaten. And then in part 2, that's when all the Rangers, because in some cases, maybe only 1 to 3 of the original team from the last season will show up to help the current team. And then in part 2, it's like, hey, I called the rest of my friends and they showed up. And then it's like, you know, the major morph up where you have both full team of Rangers show up, they morph, and then you have the huge colorful explosions in the background. That's kind of how I think Avengers part 2, Avengers 4 is going to work, where either all of the surviving Avengers and Captain Marvel will show up, or they're going to use the Time Stone to go back in time, and then it's going to be everyone, all the Avengers, all the Guardians of the Galaxies teaming up against Thanos. We'll just have to wait and see if that's what happens. But that's why this movie definitely didn't feel like a cohesive film because of the fact that I know that whatever happens in this film, they're going to resolve it in part 2. That's why it didn't feel like a complete film, despite the fact that it was almost 3 hours long. And then the Russo brothers said, like, hey, we definitely recommend getting the Blu-ray and home release because there's going to be a bunch of deleted scenes. Because one of the biggest complaints I heard about was in the trailer we saw Hulk during the Battle of Wakanda, you know, Falcon, War Machine, Captain America, the Wakandan army, Black Panther charging in to fight, you know, the army of Thanos. But in the film, we didn't see Hulk except for the beginning where he got beat down easily by Thanos. And in the comics, you know, Hulk was actually one of the few people that Thanos was afraid to fight against because he got more powerful the angrier he got, which is kind of not exactly what we saw from the Hulk in the MCU yet. My biggest hope is that maybe in part 4, we'll get World Breaker Hulk or like another variation of Hulk actually fighting against Thanos, and it'll be a great way of like showing he was afraid to fight Thanos in part Avengers 3, but he's going to make up for it in the next film. I really hope that's what happens. In terms of like, again, Doctor Strange and Tony Stark, I was kind of disappointed there wasn't a Sherlock Holmes joke or anything about the facial hair, you know, just the banter between those two. Peter Parker, definitely funny, always a joy to see on screen with his pop culture references because he's younger than everyone else. Let's see here. Yeah, in terms of like the MVP of the movie, it was Thor, hands down. I really feel like when he came back to Earth with Rocket and Groot and the original Avengers theme song, Avengers Assemble theme was playing, definitely one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I just was a bit upset by Scarlet Witch and Vision. It's kind of like Vision wanted to, I hate not say suicide, but he's like, look, my life isn't worth half the universe. And then Gamora doing the same thing with Star-Lord. I'm just like, why don't you just commit suicide or something like that? It will make it things easier for Thanos not to get the entire collection of stones. And then you have Thanos. I don't know what to make of his character. I mean, interesting villain, but definitely, you know, I know how to give him a backstory and all, but I didn't feel bad for him due to the fact that he thinks that he's doing what's right for the universe. But that doesn't mean that committing genocide is the right answer. I mean, when you snap your fingers and erase half of the universe, my question is, what goes into that elimination? Like, you know, when people die, are the people who are eliminated, are they the ones who consume the most food and resources? Are they evil? I don't really understand that. Like in the comics, it's because he wanted to impress Lady Death. Death is a female in the Marvel universe, kind of represented by a female, and he loves Death. So in order to impress her, that's why he wanted to collect the gems and erase half of life in the universe. And it's kind of interesting because in the comics, Deadpool is actually in love with Death as well. So it's almost like a weird love triangle between the three. I mean, I did see this funny meme where Nick Fury, before he gets turned to ash, when he makes that call on his phone, instead of the Captain Marvel symbol, we see the one for Deadpool. But yeah, overall, in terms of the film itself, I definitely will be doing a live stream because I want to talk with everyone about their thoughts on the movie. There's a lot more I could talk about, but in honesty, you know, there was just so much going on that it's hard to keep up. Like, if you're not a typical Marvel fan, I can definitely see you missing out on some of the jokes and continuity. But there were just so many times where it's just like, well, Thanos can turn people into bubbles and clay and blocks and confetti. So why not just do that when the Avengers are trying to fight you? I don't know. But to me, maybe it's because he doesn't commit murder and death that's unnecessary. That's kind of like what I got from it, instead of the usual trope of the villain not killing the heroes when he has the chance, and when he lets his guard down, that's when he gets overtaken. I don't know, but yeah, overall I definitely give this movie like a solid B+ or A-. Maybe maybe I should watch it again, especially when it comes out on home release, and I'll watch the deleted scenes to see if it goes with the flow of the movie, because I feel like there was just so much stuff going down. It's like, here's a scene, here's a scene. There were rarely any times where the movie just slowed down so you can kind of take it in. That's probably why the movie felt so long, not because of the 2 hour and 30-minute time, but the fact that it was just consistent story all the way through. Not saying that was a bad thing, but there were hardly any scenes where you could slow down. It was like a giant jewelry heist. It's like we have people on the run. You got the Black Order coming after people. They're trying to figure out what to do. But yeah, it was definitely a fun film. I recommend to everybody that loves Marvel. Seeing the new Iron Man armors, Iron Spider suit were definitely the highlights, as well as Thor and the Stormbreaker. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the Avengers Infinity War. Are there any other movies you want me to do reviews on? And if you haven't done so already, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on new content. And I hope you join the live stream later this week.